What's going on, guys? It's fight season MMA, and today I want to talk about Dricus Du Plessis' plan to go and fight Alex Pereira. He is eyeing this fight with Mr. Poetan, and genuinely, I think it would be an amazing fight to be had when it eventually happens. Now, the only thing I think we kind of got to look at is Alex Pereira's age, but other than that, Alex Pereira will fight any guy at any time, at anywhere, and I do think that Dricus Du Plessis would be not only a name that Alex Pereira would love to fight, but also would be a name that would make a very good pay-per-view main event in one of the hottest commodities right now in both Alex Pereira and Dricus Du Plessis, both out there being the respective champions in each division, kind of going out and doing their own thing, and genuinely some of the most exciting, most passionate fan bases of fighters to go out there and have an incredible war. I do think that this would be a very good fight, but I kind of want to highlight Dricus Du Plessis in the pathway that he kind of made himself understand to be able to get and ultimately reach this ceiling with Alex Pereira in a fight in a main event. But ultimately, before we do that, please leave a like, comment, and subscribe. That's the best way to help the channel grow. And while you're down there, please turn on the post notifications just so you guys are always and fully notified about future UFC content releasing every single day. But without further ado, let's jump right to the video talking about Alex Pereira, Dricus Du Plessis, and Dricus kind of outlining his goal and how to be able to reach that fight. Okay, so Dricus Du Plessis just kind of had an interview where he kind of touched on a bunch of things. He kind of talked about Khamzat Chimaev. He talked about Alex Pereira. He talked about his middleweight reign, but I kind of want to just focus on Alex Pereira mainly for the most part today. So he kind of said that the first thing that he ultimately needs to do is get at least 2 more title defenses in the middleweight division. And I do think that that is a very accurate thing for Dricus Du Plessis to have to do in order to be able to get this fight or have an opportunity to fight Alex Pereira. I do think that there really isn't that many individuals inside the UFC that can or should be granted a 2-division title shot. The only person right now who I think should get that 2-division title shot would be Islam Makhachev moving up to welterweight, which I know there's a kind of a weird situation there because he's friends with Bilal Muhammad and whatnot, but I genuinely do think that the only person right now who should be eligible to go up and move divisions would be Islam Makhachev and possibly even Alex Pereira if you want to see him go up to heavyweight, but I do think that he needs to fight Magomed Ankalaev first. But ultimately, Dricus Du Plessis is actually smart by saying this. I think he understands the reality and the landscape of the UFC organization. He understands that he's got one of the deepest divisions in front of him currently. He's got 2 quote-unquote #1 contenders, we can kind of say. He's got Sean Strickland, who was supposed to fight him next, and Khamzat Chimaev, who went out there and absolutely decimated Robert Whittaker at UFC 308 in that co-main event, kind of breaking his jaw or moving his teeth around in one of the craziest face crank, face something submission attempts I have ever seen inside the organization. But truly, I do think that Dricus Du Plessis understands the landscape of the middleweight division. He understands that getting more title defenses is not only going to allow him to jump up, which I think is like a prerequisite to even do so, but also to be crowned double champion. There's gonna be a road to be able to do that. You not only gotta fight a little bit more often because you kind of can't take in a lot as much time as yourself because you are leaving your current division that you are the champion of. It might need to be an interim fight or this and that, but if you're able to clean out the middleweight division, kind of leave there not to be a #1 contender, and it's gonna only make that a little bit easier to go up and kind of have justification to go do so. Dricus Du Plessis is so high on this Alex Pereira fight because he says that he's one of the best combat sports athletes walking on earth right now, and I do think that there is such a true statement to that, considering that Pereira is such a good athlete. He's got so many different techniques and so many different things that he does inside the organization that makes him just one of the best UFC fighters the organization has currently, and Pereira is such a fun fighter, and I do think that a fight with Dricus Du Plessis would be very good. You look at Dricus's kind of style that doesn't seem to work or doesn't seem like it should work at any time, but he always gets the win no matter what. I remember I picked Sean Strickland to beat Dricus Du Plessis, and I saw how he kind of was able to make adjustments and go out and win that fight, so I picked Dricus to beat Adesanya, and look at that and what happened. Dricus Du Plessis went out there, made the proper adjustments to go and beat Israel Adesanya at that UFC 305 card in Sydney, Australia, and genuinely, I think Dricus Du Plessis could do the same thing to Alex Pereira, but I do think that Pereira might be a little bit too big for him. Dricus is big himself, but Alex Pereira not cutting back down to 185 pounds, I think is a blessing in disguise for him. His chin was just so awful there that I think that if Dricus touched him, he would go to sleep. And I don't think that you should discredit Israel Adesanya. His win, I do think that it's a little overrated, but genuinely, I do think that that's still a great win for Adesanya, and I do think that a lot of these UFC middleweights could do that considering that Pereira's chin was just made out of glass. And you look at some of the shots he absorbed from Khalil Roundtree Jr., even Jamal Hill landed a couple good shots on him, but mainly Khalil, he was able to take some of those shots and just eat them like they were nothing. So I do think that Dricus Du Plessis would have an opportunity to win at 185, but I do think that at 205, he still would have a chance. It just would be incredibly less likely. Now, even though Alex Pereira wouldn't be cutting as much weight, Dricus wouldn't be doing that as much as well. But, Dricus Du Plessis at one point in his career, I believe, fought at welterweight. So it's not like Alex Pereira was a two-division kickboxing champion at light heavyweight and middleweight and all this. Like, Dricus was a smaller middleweight at the time, and I know he's bulked up, but I think he's kind of the perfect middleweight frame at this point, considering that he's gone out there and he's shown everyone why he has beaten some of the best individuals inside the middleweight division. Robert Whittaker was on a streak before going and facing Dricus, and he was after, beat him, beat Adesanya, beat Strickland, and beat a bunch of other guys inside the organization. But I do think I'm just glad that Dricus Du Plessis has a level head on him, just to say that he can't get a title shot with Alex Pereira right now, and then he needs to wait a tiny bit longer to be able to get that shot. And I just think that that is a good thing for the UFC as a whole. I hate when people are abandoning their respective divisions. Like, you got Bilal Muhammad, who was saying that he wanted to go up and fight Dricus as soon as he won the belt, and I understand that Bilal had another reason to move up so Islam could go and be the welterweight champion, but still, I think that Bilal should defend a couple times. I know Ilia Topuria is calling for a fight with Islam Makhachev, and Islam would absolutely kill him, not for a skill-to-skill thing, but consider that Islam Makhachev might be the UFC's biggest lightweight right now, and Ilia Topuria isn't one of the biggest UFC featherweights right now, even though he's got the skill, and I do think that he could win a fight against Islam Makhachev. I think Ilia's that good. He could win a fight against a lot of different individuals. But, I just don't see how he could go out there and do a bunch of different things to Islam. It kind of goes like the same thing with Dricus and Pereira. But genuinely, I'm a big fan of Dricus Du Plessis' plan. I do think that if he can win a couple more fights, kind of maybe go out there and beat Khamzat Chimaev, I do think that's going to be the fight that happens to next for two different reasons. I think that Sean Strickland is very adamant about fighting in America next. He's fought in Toronto, Canada, and Sydney, Australia in his last two fights. Completely understandable, but I also do think that a big thing for Dricus Du Plessis is he wants to stay somewhat active. He doesn't want to have these layoffs. He doesn't want to be told what to do. And if Khamzat Chimaev is going to go out there and fight in Australia, he would 100% be the person to welcome that. And genuinely, I think that Dricus Du Plessis isn't scared of anyone. I think he's actually excited about this Khamzat Chimaev fight. I do think that that's the fight that's going to end up happening. And then I do think that you make another fight possibly with, the winner of Strickland and Borjayo, or maybe Imavov and Israel Adesanya, something like that. I think there's not really a contender right in there besides Khamzat Chimaev into the middleweight division. And I do think that kind of everything will shake itself out when it is time in turn. Ultimately, like I said, Dricus Du Plessis, great plan, great champion, and he is one of the most exciting fighters the UFC has right in it right now. And a fight with Alex Pereira would be spectacular when the time comes right. Thank you guys so much for watching this episode of Fight Season MMA, and please leave a like, comment, and subscribe if you guys enjoy the content, and please let me know what you think about these kind of news of Dricus Du Plessis talking of how he wants to get two more fights and two more title defenses under his belt prior to going in there and fighting Alex Pereira. I do think that Dricus is a very competitive individual. He really wants to go in and fight the best fighters inside the organization, whether that would be moving up. I think Dricus would even move up to heavyweight if he had the opportunity to. I genuinely think that that's the fighter that Dricus Du Plessis is. And I do think that a fight with Alex Pereira would not only be a very exciting fight for the two individuals, but would also be a fight that would motivate Dricus Du Plessis harder than ever, considering that he is just one of those guys and one of those dudes inside the organization. I do think that stylistically, skill for skill, Dricus Du Plessis would have the advantage. He's just a more well-rounded fighter. And genuinely, I think that Alex Pereira would have the size advantage and the physical attributes advantage, of course, but I do think that this fight has a lot of key aspects and key components to it, and I would love to see it go down when the time is right. Well, thank you guys so much for watching this episode of Fight Season MMA, and we'll catch you guys very soon with more UFC content and news.